I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
Mr. President, what do you want to do about that?
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised. We'll see what we're going to do. What am I going to tell you? You're the fake news, aren't you? You're totally fake. All right, any other questions? I don't like what Putin is doing, not even a little bit. He's killing people. And something happened to this guy, and I don't like it.
You've talked before about putting more sanctions on Russia. Is that something you're considering more serious?
Absolutely. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. I'm not happy about that.
That's President Trump on the tarmac there, sounding off on Vladimir Putin after the Kremlin's largest drone strike yet on Ukraine since this war first started. The president considering new sanctions on Russia as a result, as some lawmakers are echoing that call. They want crippling sanctions, they say. Trump also wrote this on Truth Social. I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He's gone absolutely crazy, writes the president. The New York Post reporting a U.S. Marine who fought in Iraq and voluntarily deployed to Ukraine was killed in one of Russia's drone strikes during the frontline mission. Joining me now with more on all of this is Fox News senior strategic analyst. He's chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane, with us again. General, good to see you. Is this the answer right now, sanctions on Russia? How do we deal with this escalation from Vladimir Putin?
Well, first of all, yes, that's part of the answer. But this is vintage Putin. I mean, Putin is a war criminal. He's targeting civilians. That is a war crime. But he has always done this. In 2000, when he took over, he targeted innocent civilians in Chechnya, which was, he believed there were radicals there threatening Russia. And he went in there. Certainly there were military targets, but he took down entire villages of civilians, no military targets. He went into Grozny, their principal city, destroyed entire neighborhoods. Tens of thousands of people killed as a result of his bombing and artillery that he used on those civilians. In 2015 and 16, he did carpet bombing of Aleppo. He used chlorine bombs. He used cluster munitions that don't self-detonate like the United States does. If they're on the ground for a period of time. He used deep penetration bombs to go into underground hospitals and kill the people. It was the largest carpet bombing air campaign ever conducted since World War II. This is who Putin really is. He targets civilians, and he's doing here to put pressure on the president, because he knows the president wants to stop the killing, and he wants the president to get so frustrated he backs away. What should be done? The president almost answered. Crippling sanctions, to be sure, but also, listen, this is important because Putin pays attention to this actually more than he does with sanctions. He always thinks he can get around sanctions, and he has some evidence to prove it. And that is continued military assistance to Ukraine. That makes a difference on the battlefield. After all, we're 39 months into the war, and Putin isn't even close to taking control of Ukraine. He's still trying to get control of the 4 provinces, or oblasts, as Ukrainians call them, that he believes are theirs. And Ukraine still owns 2 of the oblast capital cities. So Putin is nowhere near where he wants to be, and we can stop him from getting there, certainly. Yeah, I think it's been long enough now to know full well he's not coming to the negotiating table and willing to do a ceasefire. The president has given him every opportunity to do this, and the president's running out of patience. I agree with him. Yeah, it's time to act.
Look, sanctions are one thing. What about economic levers, right? I mean, the Wall Street Journal mentions today banking, shutting off banking for Russia. I mean, you're talking about an economy that is about the size of Texas in Russia. Can't we be doing more in terms of shutting off Russia to the world, stopping all of the, illicit sales of oil?
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, China is financing this war. They're buying Russian oil at reduced prices. So is India. And they're supposed to be an ally of ours, obviously. Yeah, there's plenty we can do here with secondary sanctions, and I think going after the central bank is something we should have done right from the beginning. Yes, and we can hurt Putin. I'm not suggesting we can't. He's just not as intimidated by them as other people are. And that's why we got to have a 1-2 punch here. One is sanctions, and the second punch is continuing military assistance along with the Europeans.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, the secondary sanctions, you know, they haven't really hit. You know, Lindsey Graham wrote that letter talking. He's got 82 co-sponsors on a bill that would hit countries that buy Russian oil and gas with tariff sanctions, energy sales. The Journal writes are Mr. Putin's financial lifeline. So if you're hitting the countries that are actually buying the oil and gas from Russia, that also could be putting the pressure on. That's what Lindsey Graham is talking about.
Oh. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I'm not suggesting those sanctions aren't going to have an impact. They absolutely are going to have an impact. But I think that we have to do more than just that. And that's the point I'm trying to make. I'm all for those sanctions. And the fact that Graham has got 82 senators to agree on doing something like that is somewhat unprecedented to get something. And certainly the president's team knows full well what to do here. And they've analyzed this thing every which way. They know what sanctions to impose here to get the maximum effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's Graham and then Tom Kahn, Richard Blumenthal, all agreeing on putting the pressure on the countries that are on the other side of that trade, buying the oil and gas from Russia. So we'll see about that. Let me get your take on Iran. Officials there, this is reportedly open to compromising on a nuclear program talk with the U.S., while nuclear enrichment is still a hardline issue on both sides. The U.S. says no enrichment. The Iranians say we have to enrich. The commander-in-chief of Iran's army also is threatening Israel, saying that it is, quote, fully ready for another aerial strike, calling it a justified response to what they claim is Israeli aggression, General. This is also out there and not ending. Iran, what do you do?
Well, Iran is in these negotiations for the single purpose of stalling as much as possible and get concessions from the United States because they've drawn a red line. We want to be able to enrich uranium. If you give Iran the capability to enrich uranium, that means the facilities and the centrifuges to do that. They can take that uranium and weaponize it in a matter of weeks. We know that for a fact. That's indisputable. That's why you can't let them have that capability. But they want to get into these, develop a framework, kind of like what the Obama administration did in 2013. It took them 18 months to get the final deal. Iran loves to stall and use these negotiations for that end state in mind. And I think that's really what's happening here. That once again, they want to get a framework deal, which is not a final deal, which gives them then maybe a year or 2 years to improve their defenses, their air defenses, which are in shambles as a result of Israeli strikes. And I think they're willing to absorb a strike if it comes, thinking that they'll survive another day and they'll still be able to get to a nuclear weapon. I mean, you've got to understand how diabolical these dictators are. The fact that they're mullahs and supposed to be religious figures is a falsehood. They're thugs and killers controlling very good people inside of Iran.
Unbelievable. General, it's great to get your insights on all of that. We so appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, great talking to you, Maria, as always.
And to you. General Jack Keane with us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.